back to it hopefully, Fergal. So do stay tuned for that and send in your tuppence worth to us, because certainly the National Consultative Committee on Racism and Interculturalism have been speaking about it in the last 24 hours, and I've been talking about this Irish website, so we're hoping to have a look at that website and what it's all about. Now, next Wednesday, Michael Jackson will be at the centre of one of the most controversial trials in years, and he's never denied befriending young boys, but the question of molestation has always been denied. So what is it like to be one of the young boys he befriended? Well, Terry George is one such, and he joins me now. Good morning to you, Terry.
Hi, good morning, Orla.
What age were you, Terry, when you met Michael Jackson, and what year was it?
I was 13 years of age, and that's going back in 1979, so it's quite a while ago.
Okay. How did you meet him?
I had a very unusual hobby. I used to just go and knock on hotel room doors or stand in the lobby of a local hotel and the local television station and just interview any celebrities that came in. I mean, Michael Jackson was just one of many celebrities. He wasn't the Michael Jackson at the time because, of course, he was touring with his brothers, so it didn't make him like the big superstar that he is of today.
I don't think parents would be recommending to their kids at the age of 13 to be doing that nowadays.
No, I think everything has changed, you know, in the last, 20 years or so. People just don't have the confidence in letting young children go about anyway, do they? And I think that, the world seems a crueler place these days.
But certainly, as you said, 1979, different times, young boy in hotel trying to get signatures off different stars and celebrities. You were a Michael Jackson fan, were you, at the time?
No, because I don't think there were such things, or certainly not in the droves as they are now, Michael Jackson fans. Because remember, it was the Jacksons. It wasn't out on his own as being Michael Jackson. It was the Jacksons, and it was a tape that I had. I wasn't actually just collecting autographs. I was actually recording them as well, which was a bit unusual, a bit more unusual than collecting autographs.
So you had the recorder with you?
I haven't got it with me.
You had it with you at the time?
I had a tape recorder with me, yes, a little tape recorder that I used to interview them on.
And what age was he then, do you
figure? I think he was about 20 or 21 at that time.
20 or 21. So what happened, Terry?
Well, I knocked on the door, and I found out what room he was in, knocked on the door, and I said, hi, I'm doing an interview for a hobby. Is there any chance I can do an interview with you? And he said, sure, come in. So I went into the room, and that was it. I did an interview with him. It lasted about 30 minutes. Then we became very friendly. I went back to see him on 2 other occasions, 2 days later as well, the next day and the day after, Skyping from school at that time, which wasn't very good. And
why did you go back? Because you were intrigued by him? You were interested in him?
He was so friendly, and we got on so well. And it was more friendly than any other stars that I'd interviewed.
Yeah.
And we swapped telephone numbers and addresses as well at that time. So that's when, after he'd left the hotel and he'd left the city, he kept in touch with me by telephone, and same when he went back to the States, he used to ring me from there as well.
And all this time, when you said it to your parents and that, they probably just thought it was great that you had a star as a friend.
That's it, exactly it, yeah. A celebrity who was a friend and an American as well, because being from America then was very, very special as well. So, it was, the whole thing was fantastic.
So when did it turn sinister?
Well, for me, it never turned sinister. It's in the sense that, I mean, I had one telephone conversation that I'd told some friends about over the years, quite early on, a handful of friends, and one of them leaked it to a newspaper, and the newspaper rang me and picked up on it. I declined to speak to them. It was the News of the World, in actual fact. Declined to speak to them because of the way they write their stories and how sensationalist it was going to be. And this was like 10 years, more than 10 years after I'd spoken to him and had these telephone conversations. So then it ran in another newspaper, which was a Mail on Sunday, which didn't sensationalise it as much. And from there, it all got blown out of proportion. But that was the conversation that you're referring to happened about a month and a half into our conversations that used to take place.
And what did he say?
What did he say?
Yeah.
Well, I've never really got into it in graphic detail on the radio. In all honesty, I'm a bit reluctant to at the moment. I mean, I think it's been well documented in the press. It's not something that I like bragging about or even talking about, to be honest. I'm happy to talk about the fact that I had a friendship with him, and so on. But to go into the graphic detail of the conversation, I don't feel too comfortable with.
Right. And just to give a bit of context to it, though, presumably the conversation turned sexual from his angle. Did it?
Well, yes, he talked about, something of a sexual nature, but then it didn't seem sinister. It didn't seem out of the ordinary, although I felt uncomfortable and awkward at the time. Looking back on it, maybe it did have different, it was for different reasons from what I thought it was then.
And I was just going, like, if you met a 13-year-old boy now who said he had this conversation with someone that he, looked up to, or it doesn't even have to, it could be a friend, would you immediately ask questions about that person? Would you reckon, would you classify them as a paedophile? What would be your response now as an adult?
Well, that's the other thing as well, isn't it? Paedophiles have become more in the press and in the media, and people understand what paedophiles are now. So yes, I think that I would certainly question a 13-year-old boy talking to a boy over the age of 20 now, looking back. But if I was that boy of 13 talking to somebody who didn't feel much older than myself, then I wouldn't think it more. I wouldn't think that I'm talking to a paedophile here. I would probably think, it's a bit of an awkward situation.
But given what he said to you, looking back now, Terry, like you said at the time, you felt uncomfortable. But looking back on it, do you think it was completely out of order? Do you think it was very inappropriate? I mean, how do you...
Well, in the light of the allegations that are made now, yes, I think it probably was inappropriate. I mean, and I try and say this to people, that if, for example, let's say I took you out of clubs and I was the most friendliest person to you and got you absolutely drunk for free, and we had a great time and it was a good laugh, and you went home and I went home, then if you read about me 5 years later in the paper or something, that what I did was taking people out for drinks, getting them absolutely drunk, and then having sex with them or something, you would then start thinking, oh, that's odd. At the time it didn't feel odd because he was buying me drinks and I thought it was just friendly, but maybe he had other reasons why he was buying me drinks, and maybe I would have been a person who was raped by him or something. Do you understand what I'm saying there?
Did you meet Michael Jackson since then?
I've met him, yeah. I met him again in 1983. I went back to see him in London. I'd lost contact with him because we got our telephone cut off, which we got a bill in for £350, the highest bill. I mean, we got quite a few large ones, but the highest was £350. We got our phone cut off. And I lost contact with him then. I used to ring him from outside my school from a telephone box. It's when telephone boxes used to take 2p, so it's going back, quite some years. And I used to reverse the charges to him, so that wasn't convenient. And he wasn't very happy about me reversing charges. And then he changed his telephone number, and the phone went off, and so on. So I couldn't contact him anymore then.
He wasn't very happy with the reversing of charges. Good God, you must be a money grabbing as well as everything else.
I don't think it was the fact of the money. I think it was the times, because you see, when he used to ring me at home, the times were like, middle of the night for us, and obviously it was their daytimes. But when I used to do the same, ringing back in from call boxes outside school in my school break, then that was like middle of the night for them. So, I was waking the family up. His sister would sometimes answer the phone. His father would sometimes answer, and so it wasn't very good that I was ringing him at a time that was inconvenient for him, really.
How many phone calls do you think you had with him?
Oh, God, there was hours of phone conversations. I'm talking literally hours.
And did you ever record them, Terry?
Yeah, I have had some recorded. Yeah, I've recorded some of them.
And has the press taken those recordings and listened to them?
Yeah, they listened before they ran the first story. They actually listened to one of the recordings. They listened to the tape, and they've still got the tape.
All right. Did you go to the police ever about it?
No, I've never felt I'd need to go to the police. I never felt it was something that, I've never felt a victim as the press have reported. I mean, I get lots of hits to my website, terrygeorge.co.uk, and people read the whole story, and I say clearly on there that I've never felt like a victim, and I wish the story had never come out. It was almost like, I would have kept it a secret for life, really, if a person hadn't leaked it, and it wouldn't have been something I'd been going to the police about.
Just a couple of comments from our listeners. James was on. James has been quite frank about it, so I might as well be as well. Orla, let me help you. I've heard Terry talk before, and his story is interesting, mainly because the insinuation is that Jacko masturbated on the other side of the phone, other end of the phone. Nice, says James. Is that the insinuation, Terry?
Well, you can probably pick that up from a website because it does actually go into there.
Okay.
But yes, that's the insinuation, yeah.
Okay. Did Jackson stop calling Terry when he became pubescent, as it's alleged is Jacko's modus operandi? When there is grass on the pitch, it's time to move out. The fact that you were becoming pubescent, would that have impacted? Have you thought along those lines at all?
Yeah, well, When I met, I don't think the conversation stopped because I became pubescent. I think the conversation stopped because it was, the telephone conversations were becoming awkward when I ring in from school and reversing the charges at awkward hours for him. But then, when I actually met him again in 1983, I'd obviously become quite old. I was about 21 then. I